Let us go talk to the professor.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
Will James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender return as the MCU's Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto in a post-Avengers Secret Wars reboot? Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen brilliantly portrayed Professor X and Magneto in those early Fox-era X-Men films. And look, I really hope that we get to see them reprise those roles in a film like Avengers Secret Wars, the film that we believe will bring together every Marvel character from across the entire Marvel multiverse. But there are two other actors who have given just as brilliant and iconic performances of these two characters, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. And I think these two actors are the absolute best choice for the MCU's X-Men in a post-Secret Wars reality. A little later, I'm going to be joined by my friends Tommy Bechtold and MT to get their thoughts on not only the potential return of these two icons, but also some other actors that they'd like to see tackle these characters in the new MCU. But first, let's explain what is the MCU reboot, why a McAvoy and Fassbender return makes perfect sense, and how Avengers Secret Wars could bring back these two characters. So, like I mentioned a second ago, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, two legendary actors, portrayed these two comic book icons brilliantly. Their portrayals of Professor X and Magneto brought a certain level of respect and validation to those early 2000s comic book films. They really did catch lightning in a bottle with these two castings, and very rarely can you catch that lightning twice, but they did. Following the X-Men trilogy, we saw the prequel film X-Men First Class, which introduced James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as the younger versions of these two characters.
We want the same thing.
My friend, I'm sorry.
And then in a first-of-its-kind time travel Marvel movie, we got to see these two younger versions of the characters share the screen with their older selves.
Charles.
And after that, we got to see this younger cast continue the story. Granted, X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix aren't the best the franchise has had to offer.
And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
But I gotta say, both McAvoy and Fassbender did deliver groundbreaking performances even in those films. And I mean, come on, when Magneto kills those guys that slaughtered his family, or when McAvoy went toe-to-toe with Apocalypse,
Those with the greatest power protect those without.
I, someone who grew up with the X-Men trilogy, felt a nostalgic connection to these two new actors and their versions of these two characters, because they were able to capture what Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen brought to the roles, while simultaneously adding their own spin to the characters and creating their own on-screen chemistry as brothers at war. Because that's something that's extremely important when it comes to Professor X and Magneto, the chemistry of the two. Now, say what you will about Dark Phoenix, and believe me, there's plenty to say, but that ending of Xavier and Magneto playing chess, it was just beautiful, and I felt like a perfect ending to that franchise. But hey, if we know anything about Marvel, there is no end to the franchise.
New mask.
What's up?
Same task.
So while that was the last time that we saw these two in their X-Men roles, and yeah, I guess that does make sense because this film did take place in the 90s and they're supposed to be on the same timeline as the other X-Men films, so it kind of worked out that Disney bought 20th Century Fox and ended the Fox era franchise there. Well, except for Deadpool, of course.
That's Wolverine.
You're damn straight it is. Disney brought him back. They're gonna make him do this till he's 90.
And it's worth mentioning that we did see McAvoy's Professor X in Deadpool 2. But I don't think McAvoy and Fassbender are done, nor should they be. These two actors are still relatively young, and they could play these characters for the next 3 decades if they wanted to. And I think they should. The audience knows them as Professor X and Magneto, and it's really wild how easily accepted into the fold they were as these characters. Not only did they have to follow the performances of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but even when having to share the screen with those two actors playing the same roles, McAvoy and Fassbender were still able to carry their own and be just as much of a Charles Xavier and Magneto as their older counterparts. Now, we know that Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are prevented by old Father Time from being able to play these these characters many more times. Like I said, I would love to see them reprise their roles at least once more in Avengers Secret Wars. But with McAvoy and Fassbender, I think that legacy can be continued because there is a connection to the X-Men of old while simultaneously being able to deliver something fresh and brand new. You see, in Avengers Secret Wars, I think we're going to see the entire multiverse be reset, just like we saw in the 2015 Secret Wars comics. At the end of that comic series, we saw a scenario where the mainline 616 universe and the Ultimate Universe were combined into one. And I think the big Marvel multiverse culmination event that is Avengers Secret Wars could show us some Fox-era X-Men make their way over into the newly formed Marvel Cinematic Universe. A rebooted universe where some of the history we know still happened the way we remember it. On the other hand, some other things are different. I think in this newly formed MCU, the Avengers, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men will exist alongside one another and will perhaps have always existed alongside one another as far as that universe's timeline is concerned. In this rebooted universe, I think it would make sense to, yes, have the brand new MCU X-Men team that Marvel Studios can put its own stamp on, but keep some legacy aspects around, such as the faces of McAvoy and Fassbender as Professor Xavier and Magneto. This would make it to where they could just jump into the story, and those past X-Men films could be viewed as kind of a loose, not necessarily canon backstory where we get the general idea of what happened. And you don't have to worry about any canon contradictions or having to stay in line with those films that came before, because in canon, this is a brand new universe with a completely rewritten timeline, making anything possible. All right, well, now I want to bring on two of my friends, Tommy Bechtold and MT, 2/3 of Guardians of the Galaxy. So guys, I was just talking about how I think James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender would be the perfect casting for the MCU proper Professor X and Magneto. We have that history there already that can act as like this kind of vague history, but with it being a rewritten timeline post Secret Wars, you don't have to like abide by it in canon. I think that's the best way to go because they have cast these two characters, I think, perfectly twice now. So I don't know if you can do it a third time, but I want to get y'all's thoughts on just McAvoy and Fassbender as these characters, and if you think and if how they would work really in the MCU, like MCU proper, this new rebooted universe after Secret Wars. MT, I'll let you go first. What do you think about them? Can they work in the MCU?
Absolutely. Like, because this is the multiverse saga, and because, the multiverse saga and Secret Wars in particular allows for a mishmashing of like all sorts of, inter-universe type of stuff. If Kevin Feige wanted to like just take the amazing casting of Fassbender and, why am I blanking on his name? McAvoy. Yes. Oh my God.
Shame.
He's fantastic. Anyway, I think that Kevin Feige would 100% be able to like just grab them from the Fox universe and put them in the MCU very, very easily post Secret Wars. And like, if you wanted to do that, like, I would not blame him for doing that, or like, I wouldn't be sad if he did that because McAvoy and Fassbender were incredible, especially Fassbender. Like, X-Men First Class was like in a class of its own. Like, Fassbender blew me away when I saw him like shove that coin through the Nazis. I mean through what's his face's forehead, Kevin Bacon.
Who was it? Sebastian Shaw, who was a Nazi.
Yes, who was a Nazi. But I don't know. I think it'd be very easy. I think it'd be very. I wouldn't be upset about it. Though I do want to see new blood personally. I think it'd be really fun to see some new blood. But I wouldn't. I don't. I definitely think it's possible. What about you, Tommy?
I believe both of them have their place in the MCU. I love them in the Fox X-Men movies. My request is this. I want them to be variants of Magneto and Professor X, and I want them to switch. I want McAvoy to be Magneto, and I want Fassbender to be Professor X.
That would be fun. That would be so fun.
Not really. Here's the thing that I think like both of those actors are coming into their prime now as like late 40s, really mature, very, very skilled actors. And that was what the gift that we got from Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen was like. We had two just like apex, excuse me, actors who were acting the shit out of these like Marvel Comics roles, which we now know can be prestigious roles. I mean, for crying out loud, two guys have won Oscars for playing the Joker. So it's like, but so I guess Yes, I want them in there. I want them to. I don't think we need to recast Xavier or Magneto. The biggest hurdle I have is I want all of the new MCU X-Men to be from the same universe. So I guess I don't want them to be their Fox versions. I want them to be variants of themselves from a different universe that is the new MCU X-Men, because I don't want like a jigsaw puzzle of like we're getting Beast from one universe. I don't mind if it's Kelsey Grammer Beast and not Nicholas Hoult Beast. That's fine. But it's like I want a fresh slate with the X-Men, not in terms of their involvement in the MCU.
Well, and what's fun, I mean, you say, a jigsaw type thing. I think they can take various puzzle pieces from different franchises and put them into this new fresh universe, kind of like they did in Secret Wars. We saw them take the 616, mainline Marvel Comics and then the Ultimate line, and they merged it into one universe. And MT, you might be able to speak to this better than me, but didn't that kind of like rewrite the timeline as well? Like it was kind of to where it had always been that way, like kind of thing, I think.
Right. I mean, like, I'm sorry. The biggest example of that, obviously, is the Miles Morales integration into the 616 timeline post Secret Wars. Yeah, it was just like, oh my God, he was always here, and like his mom is alive, and like all this stuff, and like, it's very easy to rewrite reality into like sort of like, just have it be like, yeah, we were always here. So like, if Marvel wanted to go down that route with like, oh yeah, McAvoy, Xavier was always on the planet, and he was always sort of like, slowly gathering his mutants in the background. They could sort of do that.
I also think like McAvoy is coming into his own as like one of our greatest physical actors, like between the Split and Glass, where he played the same character in those M. Night Shyamalan movies, and Speak No Evil, which we're now, it's like, and yet we're going to constrain him to a wheelchair. He'll be a character that is kind of, wheelchair bound. We get to see all of that acting in his face and arms, and I just think that's a treat.
No, man, Jean Grey can make him walk. Have you not seen Dark Phoenix? It's very terrifying.
I understand.
I have not seen Dark Phoenix. Is that what happened?
Oh, it's terrifying. She makes him walk upstairs. It's
very weird.
It's horrible.
Dark Phoenix. I took my nephew to Dark Phoenix, and we were the only ones in the theater, and he just ran laps around the chairs the entire time because he was so disinterested in the movie. I was like, yeah, that's probably about right. If I wasn't a fat middle-aged man, I'd probably be running laps too. Instead, I'll just sit here.
Same. Well, and speaking of Dark Phoenix and these two actors having, I think, despite that movie and Apocalypse was fine, but I think these two actors have always really delivered on these performances, and I felt like. And that I talked about this a little earlier. That final scene in Dark Phoenix, MT spoiler alert for Dark Phoenix, we see we see Xavier and Magneto playing chess, and just the chemistry between their two characters. And I was like, I knew it was the end probably for them, but I was like, God, they were just really getting into what they could do with this chemistry, and they could play these characters. Neither of them are even 50 yet. And these characters are like old. They can be old, so that they can play these characters for decades,
for another 20, 30 years. The thing I have, this is like kind of the logic gap that you got to suspend for comic books, is like, how much can one person withstand? And the amount of tragedy Fassbender Magneto has withstood in his life, the amount of death, and like, first his parents, then his wife and children, then Mystique in Dark Phoenix. It's like, to me, that person is probably an insane person. I mean, Magneto's always a little insane, but like, that person probably needs to be institutionalized and can't function day to day unless they turn to complete maniacal behavior, which is what we do get sometimes from Magneto. I just feel like they OP'd the tragedy in Magneto in the Fox X-Men.
They really did 100%.
They were like,
what? Had a miserable
how much
life.
how does one guy get out of bed when you've killed his entire family every time he gets one? So it's like,
and God, I think it was the end of Apocalypse. After all Magneto has done, we saw his family, like you said, killed at the beginning of that movie. And then that final scene in the X Mansion where he kind of winks at Charles or whatever. And they're like, all right, bye. I'm so tired of him being major Earth-threatening villain, and then they're buddies.
Yeah,
You
and
gotta
then then Apocalypse came up and goes latest gators, and because it's Oscar Isaac, and he was going to do that in Moon Knight. He knew it. He was teasing us.
And Tommy, I think you actually made a good point when you were teasing perhaps they should switch roles and McAvoy play Magneto, Fassbender play Professor X, but I've got a better pitch for you. What if they both play Doctor Doom variants? Would you be happy with
that? Yeah.
ScreenCrushMerch.com. Now,
Yes,
any hero can come back to play
Everett
Doctor
K.
Doom.
Ross is a Doctor Doom variant, so I can pay off a 5-year bet, and I just need it to happen.
We've talked about McAvoy and Fassbender. Am I missing something here? I think they're the perfect choice, not just because canonically I think it could work, but also just I think they're perfect casting. I want to see more. But MT, like you mentioned a second ago, you want new blood. You want some fresh stuff. Am I wrong here? Would the better path be to just after Secret Wars and we're in our fresh new MCU universe, do we just have brand new Professor X, brand new Magneto for our brand new X-Men? Is that the path that would be better to go? Fresh new faces?
Well, personally, I think that, yeah, I feel like that's the better path to go because, like, Marvel Studios is very much they very much begun their own mutant narrative over the course of their more recent projects, and like I think that like because of that, like much like Tommy said earlier, like we are probably going to see their own versions of Professor X like slowly like wrangling all these mutants together and being like, hey, I know that you guys are all separate and confused, but like this is what's happening to your body. Let me explain this. This is puberty, mutant puberty. And yeah, and I think that like an own separate 616 Professor X would be the way to go. But like I don't know, like because of this is Secret Wars and anything could happen after Secret Wars. Like they could easily just be like, yeah, Hugh Jackman and like everybody, like all the best people from Fox's past are now just these characters. That could easily happen.
It would be really interesting. I guess this is kind of just like ultimate fan service, but it's definitely Tom Bechtold service. If like after the events of Secret Wars, like your Doctor Stranges and your Nick Furies and your Rhodey Rhodeses of the elder statesmen of the MCU, if you will, if they now know the blueprint of where the X-Men in the 616 universe are going to be, but like they kind of have to keep that, they have to like stoke the fires of the like they're like, yeah, there's a man named Charles Xavier that's probably got some interesting stuff going on in his mansion, like. They have to like organically get it to happen. Like they can't force the X-Men to come together. They have to like push the events. Like they're like, let's make him Surgeon General, and he can do some health initiatives for the growing youths and their changes in their bodies.
I would love that.
MT, you make a good point though. The Secret Wars really is the perfect excuse for them to just hit the reset button and can do whatever they want. They have no limitations. If they want to keep certain actors around, they can. Like Chris Hemsworth, I think they should keep him on as Thor
absolutely
for freaking ever. I don't see a reason to recast Thor. But hey, maybe they do want to cast a new Tony Stark or something like that, have a new Iron Man. I think Secret Wars makes anything possible there.
But no, I feel like the whole purpose of the multiverse saga narrative, and we see it with like projects like Spider-Man No Way Home and Secret Invasion. I feel like there's this whole like subtle like behind the scenes like what do you call it, narrative about immigration and like how like we can all just accept people like and refugees rather. And so like I think that the whole multiverse saga narrative is going to sort of like wrap up with this idea of like, hey, all these people from different universes need a home. Let's just make one big home for all these Marvel characters post Secret Wars. So like we could theoretically see like the Fox Fantastic Four, the Fox X-Men living on the same planet as like all the new 616 variants that we're going to see in the future. So we could see like the McAvoy's Xavier sort of like talking with this new Xavier, and like old Blade talking with the new Blade.
I think they should live like the Barbie movie. They should live in like a place called Superhero Land where there's like, hi Professor X, hi Professor X, hi Professor X, hi Professor X, hi Magneto, hi Beast. Beast is Alan.
Oh my god!
Peace and love. I would hate that. No, I'm all for yes. Bring the universes together, but no.
When I wake up,
I think
In my
post
cool
multiverse saga.
wheelchair. Everybody laugh because I have no hair. Hey, Charles.
I do think it would be time to like pause with the whole variant thing, like after the multiverse
Yeah.
saga.
Enough's got to be enough eventually, right? Like it can't
Yeah.
it turns into a soap opera a little bit if it's like, well, I'm not
Yeah.
really James Smith. I'm actually Don Blake, scientist from Asgard.
Well, and it really creates an opportunity, I think, for like the stage we're at in comic book movies now. I liked your point about wanting to see Charles recruit mutants and stuff, but man, I feel like that's been played out a little. I'm so tired of like origin stuff. I just want like an opportunity for Secret Wars to go boom. Here's one concise universe. Every freaking best version of every Marvel character is in it. No more origins for a while, except for new characters, of course. We're just going to tell awesome X-Men stories. The team is already assembled. There's history there. That's kind of what I was hoping to see. And that's why I think perhaps bringing them in would make that more possible. We don't have to do like another origin of, oh, well, here's how they met and see Magneto's family die a few more times.
I think that also opens the door to really enhance the Disney Plus shows too. It really, if you create that world, then you can have the TV shows taking place on that world in whatever areas that are designated, for locations, without it being like, why won't Iron Man intervene? You know what I mean? Like it's just like you can create that massive world and then be like, there's so many heroes and so many villains that they're busy, okay, and they have off-world threats.
Right.
Well, and speaking of that, let me ask you guys this: do you think this next saga post Secret Wars is that going to be the mutant saga? Or are we going to see the X-Men take center stage? Are we going to see the Avengers kind of take a step back? Yeah, MT, please.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think Kevin Feige has said that like that's what's happening post Secret Wars, is like the whole mutant saga thing, and like I feel like that's what people really want to see, and like that's really where the bulk of like, the Fox Disney acquisition juice is. It's with the X-Men. And I think that Kevin Feige, ever since like his first like producer role in cinema history is with X-Men 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like he's been dying to like really get his hands on the X-Men, and like he sort of like did that with obviously X-Men 97, which was fantastic, and a little bit with Deadpool and Wolverine. But like I think that he really wants to just like be like, hey, this is my version of the X-Men without like anybody else telling me what to do. And I cannot wait to see that personally. I think that like he'll do a really good job there.
And it's kind of odd. Had you asked me a few years ago, will the Secret Wars movie be called Avengers Secret Wars? I probably would have said, yeah, they'll probably call it that because it's really just become like an IP thing. But really, it should probably just be Marvel's Secret Wars. I mean, there are so many other things going on besides it just being the Avengers. And I kind of think that's the direction they're going. Tommy, what do you think? Are we finally going to see like them kind of let go of the Avengers a little bit? Like
I do think so. I think to agree with both of you, I think that that it is going to be the age of the mutants after this, and it makes sense. I mean, you kind of cool off the Avengers a little bit and start titling things Marvel's, Marvel's the X-Men, Marvel's this, the team up movies can just be Marvel's, rather than have them all fall under the Avengers name. And then guess what? 6-7 years go by and it's just like Batman, right? The time between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins was like 8 years. It felt like they totally rebooted that entire Burton and Joel Schumacher verse into the Nolan Batman in 8 years. And then guess what? The time between The Dark Knight Rises and The Batman was like 8 years. So it doesn't take people long to be ready for a completely, kind of like revisiting of these characters. Like you just have to tell original and good stories. Like the reason why the Nolan verse can transition to Matt Reeves' The Batman and both can be successful and beloved in different ways is because they tell different stories with the same characters that are interesting and engaging. And I think Marvel will have a chance to do that if they rest some of these, Avengers and Avengers adjacent characters a little bit that there's just fatigue on, and rest introducing new Avengers. I think they need to introduce mutants and new mutants and the new mutants again in a better way to be, I don't think we need to revisit the New Mutants. Although
Right.
shout out to them for trying.
Hey, yeah, I remember seeing that movie during COVID at a drive-in.
Me
but
too.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I left, not because the movie was bad, but because the script. I ended up watching the movie, on Blu-ray when it came out, and I thought it was fine. But the drive-in I went, sorry, this is really off topic. The drive-in I went to, the screen was like so dim, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
is this just the
Oh,
projector,
no.
or
Yeah.
is this movie like
Or any kind of
super
a darkly lit movie. That's not one you want to have. It's like watching Game of Thrones on a TV with the brightness turned all the way down. You're just asking for trouble.
Oh, and there were these idiots in front of me that didn't turn their headlights off.
Oh,
Sorry,
God.
yeah.
Nightmares at the drive-in.
I have one more question, kind of a bonus question that I want to ask you guys.
Oh.
Daphne Keane as X-23. She denied that she was even in Deadpool and Wolverine. And then, of course, we saw her pop up. I was very glad to see her there. I think she should be the new Wolverine for a little while. Hugh Jackman is totally going to be in Secret Wars. After that, yes, we're going to have a new Wolverine. But I think for the sake of whoever that actor is who comes into that role, I think you need some breathing room between Hugh Jackman and whoever your new Wolverine is. And I think the perfect transition is to bring X-23 in and have her fill that Wolverine type role for at least a few years. And then you can bring in a new Wolverine. I think it should be Henry Cavill's Wolverine. But I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that. Do you think...
Yes.
do you think, and I know people are going to say, oh, no, it's woke. They're replacing him with a girl. But I think it works perfect.
Which is so bullshit because when Logan came out, we're like, she's f***ing awesome. She
Yeah,
could, like,
exactly. and she's so much like her dad. And it writes itself if she finds herself like in a new universe and doesn't know who she is or where she comes from. I mean, that's so Wolverine. So what would you guys think if she replaced Wolverine just temporarily?
I think that would be like more than fine, and I feel like that would be like you said, like a very logical choice for them to do, especially when Kevin Feige is also thinking about Young Avengers, and like how he's sort of going to do that. I feel like her on the Young Avengers team would be phenomenal, while also like sort of like doing double duty with the X-Men. Like she could be like that little bridge between the Avengers and the X-Men there.
Yes,
but like Daphne Keane, she's phenomenal in the role, and I feel like if they do something like they could easily do like a post-Secret Wars narrative where Daphne's like, oh yeah, like now we're on this like new Marvel Earth, but where's the actual Wolverine? Let me try to find like this Earth's Wolverine,
right?
And then she runs into like the the new X-Men, the new MCU Wolverine during that like little adventure. But like I feel like Daphne Keane being the next Wolverine, at least for a little while, would be a very logical choice, while Marvel Studios makes the long and arduous journey to finding the next Wolverine, which is like not an easy thing to do because Hugh Jackman was phenomenal and irreplaceable.
Tommy, are you in support of the Disney woke agenda? And
I pledge my life to the Disney woke agenda always and forever. Hashtag renew the acolyte. I think it makes perfect sense. I think she's got the chops, not the mutton chops, thank God. But yeah, she's a great Wolverine, and it would be really fun, and it's an earned character. It's not like it's not one that mouth breathing internet trolls can be like, woke, they changed the gender. It's like, yeah, she's been a Wolverine variant or clone for like 10 years on film now. Yeah. So like, you know what? I think we're okay. And she's also great in that role. Like, I mean, she killed it in Deadpool. She's amazing in Logan. I mean, her and Hugh Jackman and Logan is like, it'll make you cry, it'll make you cringe with all the blood. It's really they're something to marvel at, no pun intended. Really, honestly, I can't believe I just said that. But
well, nothing beats the chops comment. That had me. The possibilities really are just endless. Despite what you'll say about Marvel as of late, they've had some flops, but I think they're really in a position to do something really cool with Secret Wars, but also post Secret Wars. So I'm really excited for what that future universe, post multiverse saga looks like. And I think the possibilities are endless. Lots of room for really new, cool stuff, new faces, but, keeping some of the legacy around as well, I think is important. I want to thank both of you so much for joining me. 2/3 of Guardians of the Galaxy. We'll have that link to their great podcast down below that they do with a friend of the show, Whitney Van Lanningham. Thank you both. Really appreciate you being here. If you guys are new here, be sure to subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.